The wind came crawling that evening, low and mean, like it carried secrets too tired to shout. Dust curled around the fence posts like old prayers, unanswered but still whispered. Jack Callahan stood on the porch of his broken-down ranch, boots planted firm in cracked wood, one hand resting on the butt of a rusted shovel. Not a rifle, not anymore. The sky above was the color of dried blood and bruised cotton, the kind of light that made you feel watched. He hadn't spoken to another soul in weeks, maybe months. His cattle had thinned. The barn door creaked louder than it should, and the coffee pot, now more rust than tin, sang alone most mornings. But it wasn't the silence that hollowed him. It was the memories. Behind him, tucked in a drawer no one ever opened, lay a ring wrapped in cloth. A woman's band, gold-faded, once promised to a life that never made it past the fever season. Alongside it, a folded Bible with margins filled by a hand no longer living. Jack didn't pray, but sometimes, when the wind hit just right, he listened. That evening, something shifted in the stillness. First came the hoofbeats, slow, even, like they didn't care who heard them. Then shapes, 3 riders, dark against the dying light. No flags, no rifles out, just movement, purposeful, quiet, Comanche. He didn't reach for a weapon, just narrowed his eyes. The lead rider was older, wrapped in leather and time, eyes like river rock. He dismounted with the care of a man who didn't want trouble but wasn't afraid to bring it if he had to. "I'm Hawk," the man said, voice like gravel rolled in whiskey. "These are my daughters." The girls sat their horses with stillness carved from years. One had eyes that flicked like lightning. The other, she just stared, calm as a grave, like she'd already sized him up and wasn't impressed. Jack didn't move, didn't speak. "We bring no fight," Hawk continued, "just a choice." Jack raised one brow. "She," Hawk nodded toward the quiet one, "is willing to stay, if you are." The porch held its breath. She didn't smile, didn't blink, just watched him. The wind picked up again, tugging at her braid. Jack looked past them, to the open land, the dying sun, the road no one took anymore. Then he said nothing, but he didn't go inside either. He stayed. Jack didn't sleep that night, not really. Just lay in bed, boots off but shirt still on, listening to the wind slide under the roof like it was hunting something, maybe him. By dawn, he was on the porch again. The world smelled like dirt and dew. Cold coffee in one hand. No visitors in sight. Until he saw it. A stack of wood, cut clean, tied with a strip of cloth, red, with a sun-stitched emblem in the middle. Comanche pattern. Not from town, not bought. He didn't smile, but he squinted, long and slow, like trying to read a letter without opening it. 3 days passed. 3 more gifts. First, a pouch of cornmeal stitched with the same red thread. Then, a shawl draped on the gate, frayed but warm. Last, a carved whistle, simple, unpainted, left on the porch rail beside the old boot scraper. He never caught her doing it, never saw the girl. Lena, that was her name, approach. But he knew it was her. And each day, without meaning to, he did things he hadn't done in years. He swept the porch. He washed his coffee mug. He left the front door cracked open when it used to stay bolted shut. On the 5th day, he found a horseshoe nailed into the fence. Not one of his. Clean metal, fresh nails. A quiet kind of asking. That same evening, the younger sister, the talkative one with trouble in her eyes, rode up while Jack was checking the water troughs. Tessa. She leaned on her saddle horn like it owed her something and said, plain as sunrise, "She won't ask again." Jack looked at her, still chewing on a blade of grass. Wasn't aware she had. "You ain't said yes," Tessa shrugged, "but you sure as hell haven't said no." She turned her horse, didn't wait for a reply. Dust kicked up and was gone. Jack stood there a long while, staring at the horizon. Sun melting into gold, the kind of light that makes men remember what they lost. He didn't say anything, but that night he left the shawl on the porch rail, folded neat, facing the wind, and for the first time in too long, he lit the fire. Not for heat, for company. The fire cracked like old knuckles in the hearth, soft but stubborn. Jack sat nearby, boots off now, eyes flicking to the open door more times than he'd admit. Nothing came. No sound, no steps, no Lena. By morning, the porch was empty. No gifts, no thread, just wind. The shawl he'd folded sat untouched, edges fluttering like it was trying to say something, but forgot how. Jack ran a hand through his beard. He felt foolish, and worse, he felt lonely. He worked that day harder than he needed, fixed the back gate, cleared the barn's gutters, sharpened tools that hadn't cut anything but silence in years. But the worst chore was the waiting. By dusk, he found himself walking out toward the ridge. Not far, just enough to look. No one. Then, just as he turned back, he spotted her. Lena. She was standing near the dry creek bed, alone, holding something, a basket maybe, wrapped in cloth. But she didn't move, didn't wave, didn't walk toward him. She just set the basket down and turned away, back into the trees. Her braid swayed once, caught the last of the light, then was gone. Jack reached the basket and opened it slow. Inside, a loaf of ash-baked bread, still warm, and under it, a sprig of sage, a sign, a question. He carried it home like it might fall apart if he held it wrong. He didn't eat that night. He stared at that bread like it had said his name out loud. Later, as the wind rolled back in, rougher this time, he walked to the porch again. Amos, his old dog, followed but didn't bark, just lay beside the step, watching. Jack looked to the stars, then to the trail beyond the fence. The road no one traveled. Then he did something he hadn't done in years. He took the ring from the drawer, set it on the table, looked at it, long. And when he stepped outside again, he didn't bring a gun. He brought 2 cups of coffee, just in case. Can you guess what's about to happen? Leave your prediction in the comments. The next morning, Lena came back. She didn't knock, didn't speak, just walked the fence line like she had the past few days, only slower this time, less sure. Like she was waiting for something, or trying to see if it was still waiting for her. Jack was already outside, fixing a hinge on the barn door that didn't need fixing. His hands worked steady, but his eyes drifted. Just once. Enough. She saw him. Didn't wave, didn't smile, just kept walking. He didn't follow, but he did something else. He poured an extra cup of coffee and left it on the porch rail. Steam curled like a question mark. By noon, the cup was empty. He didn't see her take it, but it was gone. And that was the first rule they didn't say out loud. No talking unless it mattered. That night, Jack left the porch light on. Just a lantern, swinging slow, soft. A signal, maybe. Or a habit he forgot he missed. In the morning, she was there again. This time, she was sitting near the barn, cross-legged, hands working quietly, stitching something. Her fingers moved like they had purpose older than speech. Jack brought out a slice of salted pork and a chunk of bread, placed them on a flat rock between them. Didn't say a word. She didn't say thank you, just nodded, ate slow. By the third day, the distance between them had changed, but not by much. Still no conversation, still no shared fire. But the silence? It had softened. There were no more sideways glances, no sudden stillness when one entered the other's space. Just a kind of understanding, like two wolves in the same woods who decided not to bare their teeth. Tessa came by once, all grin and sass, kicking up dust with her boots like she meant to challenge the sun. "You two always this romantic?" she teased. "Or is this some old cowboy mating dance I don't know about?" Jack didn't answer, just handed her a tin of dried meat for her father. Lena didn't blush, but her needle moved faster. After Tessa rode off, neither of them said a word for the rest of the day. That night, Jack found something tucked under the porch rail again, a small, folded cloth pouch. Inside, a feather and a strip of sage. Peace and protection. He didn't ask what it meant, didn't need to. He set it by the window, near the Bible and the ring. And when he turned in that night, the door wasn't locked. Not because he forgot, but because he didn't want to. The mornings came colder now. Spring in the high plains was a liar, sun by noon, frost by dawn. But Lena never flinched. Every day she showed up like she had a reason to, like something in this old ranch meant something to her, even if she didn't say why. Jack noticed things. The way she wrapped Amos, the old dog, in a wool scrap she must have stitched herself. The way the woodpile near the porch stayed stacked just a little too neat for a man who didn't stack neat. The way his saddle, cracked at the edge for months, now bore fresh stitching, same red thread she always used. He didn't ask, and she didn't brag. They just let the work speak. One afternoon, Lena left a tin of salve on the windowsill. Pine sap and bear fat, smelled sharp but healing. Jack had been limping from an old knee he never admitted hurt. He used it that night. Didn't say thank you. But the next morning, he fixed the broken step she'd tripped on earlier that week. By week's end, she was mending one of his old shirts. He saw her on the porch, threading the needle like she was sewing up time itself. He didn't stop her, just placed a folded kerchief beside her, his mother's, white with faded blue edges. She paused, touched it once, then kept sewing. Later that day, Jack returned from town with a second cup, same size as his, same chipped edge. He set it beside hers. That was how it worked between them. Not grand gestures, just steady ones. That night, they sat near the same fire for the first time. Not too close, not quite facing, but close enough to feel the heat from the same flame. Neither spoke, but Lena handed him a slice of dried apple wrapped in cloth. He chewed slow. After a while, he said the first real thing in days. "You always do for folks like this?" Lena didn't look at him. "Not folks," she said. Just that. Jack didn't press. Just let the words sit there, warm and strange, like a coat you weren't sure fit but didn't want to take off. The stars stretched wide overhead, and the fire popped soft. For a moment, nothing hurt. And for the first time in years, Jack didn't feel like he was guarding something. He just felt present. It was some time past midnight when Jack heard it, soft, strangled, like something caught between breath and memory, a sound no man makes on purpose. He slipped from his bed, bare feet on cold wood, and followed the noise past the front room, past the quiet sway of the porch lantern. It was Lena, curled tight near the barn wall, arms around her knees, head bowed, not shaking, not weeping loud, but stuck in that place grief sends you when sleep ain't safe. Jack didn't say a word, didn't walk closer, just turned back inside and came out a minute later with a wool blanket and a mug of water, set them down a few feet away, not next to her, just near. He didn't wait, just left her to it. By morning, the blanket was folded neat and sitting on his porch chair, the cup washed. From then on, Jack noticed more. The way Lena flinched when thunder cracked. The way she stared off during sunsets, like they reminded her of something she'd buried deep. The long scar across her left forearm, faded but jagged, like it'd come from a fight she didn't win, just survived. And he didn't ask, because that kind of pain didn't need retelling. It needed room. One day, while fixing fence posts on the far edge of the property, Lena wandered out with a tin lunch, said nothing, just handed it to him, turned, and walked a few paces before stopping. She looked back, not quite at him, past him maybe. "You got ghosts?" she asked. Jack didn't blink. "One or two," he said, "but they don't talk much these days." She nodded. "They still show up?" "Sometimes." That was it. No follow-up, no digging, just truth laid bare and left alone. That evening they sat under the big cottonwood, each with a cup of coffee, steam curling into dusk. Jack rubbed his knee. Lena stared at the fireflies blinking across the tall grass. "You know," she said, voice low, "my brother used to tell me stars were holes poked in heaven where the light leaks through." Jack glanced up. Sounds like a smart man. He was. She didn't say more, and he didn't need her to. Sometimes healing ain't about fixing the wound. It's about letting someone see it and not look away. And that night, neither of them did. The first time they shared words worth remembering, it wasn't planned. It came under a sky freckled with stars. One of those nights where the wind held its breath and the land lay flat and quiet like it was listening too. Jack was oiling the hinges on the porch swing. Lena was nearby, wrapping dried herbs in small bundles, sage, lavender, cedar. Her fingers moved like prayer, steady and silent. "Ever wonder," Jack said suddenly, "what it's all for?" Lena didn't look up. "You mean the land or the pain?" "Both," he said, surprised at himself. She tied the last bundle tight before answering. "My mother used to say, 'This world breaks us so we know how to hold things softer.'" Jack blanked. "That's some Comanche proverb?" She shook her head. "No, just a woman who buried too many." They didn't speak again for a long time, but something passed between them. Not comfort, not clarity, something truer. Later that night, Lena pulled an old book from her saddlebag and handed it to Jack. Worn cover, dog-eared pages. Pilgrim's Progress. Jack gave a soft huff. "My mother read this. Said I'd understand it when I was older. I'm older. Still don't." Lena smiled, just barely. "You might now." They sat on the porch, backs against the wall, and read by lantern light. Took turns, slow and careful, voices soft. When Jack stumbled on a line, "The way is rough and steep," he paused. Lena looked over. "That's where most turn back," she said. "But he didn't," Jack replied. She nodded once. "That's why it matters." That was the moment, the one neither could name, but both would remember. Not because it was grand, but because it was real. The next morning, Lena found a new tin cup beside hers, hand-carved handle. Her name etched into the wood in a shaky hand. She didn't comment, just used it. And Jack? He didn't mention that she left a pair of soft leather gloves beside his tools, stitched with a star on the palm, just like the one on the cloth she gave him days ago. That's how they spoke now. In firelight, in shared pages, in gifts that asked nothing but said everything. They weren't lovers, not yet, but something was already promised, not with vows, with presence. And some nights, when the wind crept soft across the hills, they'd both look up, different sides of the porch, same sky above. Neither one needed to say it. They were starting to belong. It was the kind of heat that made even the snakes lie still. Jack was tightening the latch on the chicken coop when he heard the horses, 3 of 'em, riding hard from the south trail. The dust they kicked up was angry, not wind dust, man dust. He knew those saddles before he saw the faces. Clay Mercer, Bill Denny, and Travis Lane. Men he'd ridden with during the war, before things went quiet in his soul. They pulled up near the fence like they still owned the place. "Well, I'll be damned," Clay said, grinning under a hat stained with whiskey and sweat. "Look who decided to crawl out of his hole." Jack didn't smile, just wiped his hands on his jeans. What brings you out this way?" Bill chuckled, spit on the dirt. "Heard a story. Figured we'd check if it was true." Jack said nothing. Clay leaned forward in the saddle, eyes scanning past Jack toward the barn where Lena had just slipped inside. "She real?" Clay asked. "Or just some fever dream you been feeding off?" "Thought you had standards," Travis added. "Didn't figure you for a squaw lover." That word, it hit like a slap, even if Jack didn't flinch. "She ain't for you to talk about," Jack said, voice flat. "Oh, so it's true then," Clay said, grinning wider. "Didn't think the mighty Jack Callahan would let some wild woman play house on his porch." "You boys done?" Jack asked, real slow. Bill shrugged. "Sure, just thought you'd want to hear what folks are saying. Word's spreading, Jack. Might want to get ahead of it before someone with less patience comes looking." They turned their horses. But just before they rode off, Travis looked back. "You used to be one of us." Jack met his eyes. "I still am, just not the kind that spits on people who ain't got your skin." They didn't laugh this time. They just laughed. Dust trailing behind them like shame they didn't want to admit. When Jack turned around, Lena was standing in the barn's shadow. Not hiding, just watching, her face unreadable, her hands still. That night she didn't come to the porch, didn't drink the coffee, didn't leave the gloves by his tools. The ranch felt colder than it should have, like something had broken, but quiet. He didn't sleep, didn't light the fire. He just sat with the ring in his hand and wondered what silence meant when you were the one who caused it. 3 days passed. No Lena, no Tessa, just wind, creaking wood, and the sound of Jack's own guilt settling into his bones. He worked like a man owed something to the dirt, chopping wood that didn't need chopping, repairing hinges that already worked fine. Every little task was a way to dodge the quiet inside him. But nothing helped. The ranch didn't feel like his anymore. It felt like it was waiting for someone else. That morning he saddled his horse, packed a canteen, and rode east, toward the canyon trail where the Comanche had made camp weeks ago. The smoke from their fire was thinner now, barely reaching the trees. When he arrived, it was quiet. Tessa stood near the edge of camp, arms crossed, eyes full of questions she didn't bother asking. "She's not here," she said. "Didn't figure she would be," Jack replied. Tessa tilted her head. "You come to say sorry?" "No," Jack said. "I came to fix something." "Good," she said, walking past him, "because she ain't waitin' on words." Jack found Old Hawk sitting by a stump, sharpening a blade, slow and steady like he'd been expecting this moment all along. "She will not return," the elder said without looking up. "Not unless you bring her back. I didn't send her away." "You said nothing," Old Hawk replied. "Sometimes that's worse." Jack didn't argue, didn't defend, just reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a small, cloth-wrapped bundle, unwrapped it slow. The ring, gold dulled by time, edges smooth from memory. Old Hawk looked at it, then looked at Jack. "You understand what it means now?" he asked. Jack nodded. "I think I always did. I just didn't know if I was worthy of it." "You're not," the elder said, calm and clear. "None of us are. That's why it matters." Jack stayed the night by the fire. No tent, just stars and the cold truth of change. In the morning, Lena returned. She didn't say a word, didn't look surprised. She just walked past him, sat by the coals, and began tying sage bundles again. Jack didn't interrupt. He sat down across from her and placed the ring between them. Not in her hand, on the earth, between equals. Lena stared at it for a long time. Then, without speaking, she took the ring, slipped it on, and got back to work. No kiss, no embrace, just the kind of peace that don't come easy,
but stays when it does.
And later that night, as the fire burned low, she moved her blanket just close enough to his. Not touching, but almost. And that was enough. The days that followed felt weightless. Not easy, not fixed, just lighter. Lena stayed. She didn't move into the house, but her presence was everywhere. Bundles of herbs drying under the porch eaves, a new string of beads hanging from the gate, her shawl folded neat on the porch rail, like a flag no one saluted, but everyone respected. Jack didn't ask her to move in. She didn't ask him to say anything. That's how they worked. Like two trees grown close, roots tangled beneath, even if their branches never touched. But something hung in the air, like the way the sky goes still before a twister, a heaviness. One morning, while feeding the chickens, Jack found a stone placed on top of the fence post near the barn. Smooth, white, marked with 3 charcoal lines. Comanche symbol. He didn't know what it meant, but he knew it meant something. That same afternoon, Lena stood near the corral, staring out at the ridge. She wasn't holding anything, wasn't looking for anyone, just still. Jack walked over, slow. "You all right?" She nodded, didn't speak. Then, after a long pause, she whispered, "I feel like something's coming." Jack didn't ask what, he didn't need to, he felt it too. That night, he checked the rifle, oiled the hinges on the back door, left the fire burning longer than usual. Lena didn't sleep in the barn. She laid her blanket near the hearth, back to the flame, eyes open longer than they should have been. Sometime near dawn, there was a knock. Not hard, not urgent, just off. Jack opened the door, hand resting on the rifle, but it was just a bundle, wrapped in brown cloth. No name, no note. Inside, a dead crow, and a single white feather, cut at the base. Lena looked at it once, didn't speak, but her face tightened like a rope pulled too far. She folded the cloth, set it in the fire, and watched it burn without blinking. Then she looked at Jack, eyes not afraid, just done waiting. "You know what this means?" he asked. She nodded. "It means we're not invisible anymore." He sat beside her, didn't touch, didn't speak, but his rifle lay across his knees now, loaded. And outside, the wind shifted. The kind of wind that carried not just dust, but reckoning. It started with smoke, thin at first. Just a thread curling past the ridge like it wasn't sure where to go. But Jack knew the scent. Dry pine, tar, cloth. Not campfire smoke, angry smoke. He dropped the feed bucket and grabbed his rifle before the thought even finished forming. Lena was already at the barn, saddle in hand, eyes sharp. "It's them," she said. He didn't ask who. He didn't need to, because they'd been waiting for this, since the crow, since the feather, since the world remembered it still knew how to hate. Jack saddled his horse fast. Lena rode beside him, both cutting through the high grass like blades. When they reached the canyon line, they saw it. The Comanche camp, half gutted by fire. Tents collapsed, smoke rising, ash floating like snow that had lost its way. Old Hawk lay on the ground near the fire pit, one hand clutching his side, blood dark against his tunic. Tessa was screaming. Jack leapt off first, dropped to his knees beside the old man. "Bullet," Old Hawk rasped, "came at dawn, no warning, no reason." Lena was already dragging buckets from the stream, trying to smother the last flames. Jack scanned the horizon. 3 riders, distant now, galloping back toward town like dogs with bloody teeth. He didn't chase, not yet. Tessa ran to her sister, sobbing, hands burnt. "We couldn't stop them. They said we weren't supposed to be here."
Jack helped Old Hawk sit upright, his breath ragged but steady. "You shoulda let me finish dyin' last winter," the elder chuckled, bitter. Jack shook his head. "You ain't finished anything." Behind him, Lena was kneeling in the ashes, clutching something to her chest. The ring. She'd dropped it when the fire came. Now she held it like it was the only thing left that still meant home. Jack walked over, bent beside her, placed his hand over hers. "You shouldn't be alone in a storm like this," he said. Lena looked up, eyes rimmed red but steady. "I wasn't." And for the first time she leaned in, not into his arms, but into her presence, into the thing they'd built without a single promise. And behind them the wind turned sharp, like it had questions and expected answers. The fire was mostly out by dusk. Ash stuck to sweat, blood turned stiff on fabric. The camp looked like a ghost town that never got to live first. Jack stayed.
He helped Tessa wrap her palms in cloth soaked with river mint, helped Lena rebuild one of the tents using what wasn't charred. And when the sun dipped low, he sat beside Old Hawk, who hadn't said much since noon. The old man opened one eye. "They'll come again." Jack nodded. "I know. And you'll have to choose who you are." "I already did," Jack said. Old Hawk gave the faintest smile. "Good, but make sure they see it." That night, Jack rode alone into town. Didn't say goodbye, didn't make a speech. He rode quiet, but not small. When he hit the main road, the saloon lights still burned, yellow and dirty. The same 3 men were there, Clay, Travis, and Bill, leaning against the rail like they owned the dust beneath them. Jack dismounted slow, tied his horse loose, walked up with a kind of calm that made folks hold their breath. Clay saw him first. "Well, look who crawled back." Jack didn't stop walking, didn't stop until he stood 3 feet from them. "I buried a tent today," he said. They looked confused. "I pulled a girl from fire, helped stop the bleeding from a man who never once spat at me, even when I deserved it." Travis shifted.
"You here for revenge?" Jack shook his head. "I'm here so y'all know where I stand." Clay sneered. "We already know." "Good," Jack said. "Then don't ever come near my land again." He didn't draw, didn't need to, just stared until all 3 looked away. Cowards with dust on their boots and nothing in their chests. As he turned to go, someone from inside whispered, "Ain't no place for your kind here no more, Callahan." Jack stopped at the doorframe, looked back once. "I ain't here for a place," he said. "I'm here for a person." And with that, he left. No shots fired, but the air still smelled of smoke and choices made. By the time Jack returned, the camp smelled of wet ash and cedar smoke. Lena was sitting near the fire pit, arms around Tessa, who had cried herself out. The tent Jack helped patch was up, lopsided but standing. One of the poles was charred, but still holding. Jack didn't speak. He unsaddled his horse, tied it near the stream, and walked toward the fire. Lena looked up when he got close, not startled, just curious. He knelt beside her, pulled something from his coat pocket, a small tin box. He opened it slow. Inside, the ring.
The same one his mother had worn through 2 wars and 1 heartbreak. But this time it wasn't wrapped in cloth. It was sitting on a strip of beaded leather, one Lena had given him weeks ago, never asking what he'd do with it. Now she knew. He didn't say anything, didn't offer it with a speech or a question. He just held it out, palm open, eyes steady. Lena didn't reach for it, not right away. She looked at the fire, then at her sister, then at him. "You sure?" she asked. Jack nodded. "I was sure before I knew what sure meant." That made her smile, small, real. She didn't take the ring. She reached for his hand,
turned it gently, and slid the ring onto her own finger. Slow, deliberate. Then let his hand go. No kiss, no tears. Just two people sitting side by side, smoke curling between them, something ancient and honest settling into place. Later, back at the ranch, Jack moved the second porch chair, finally, beside the first. He added a second hook for a shawl, and he left the front door unlatched through the night. Inside, Lena placed a bowl of dried herbs on the windowsill, her gloves beside his, her brush next to his comb. Tessa slept near the fire.
And outside, the land was still wounded. But something in the air felt finished, like a sentence that didn't need a period because the meaning was already clear. They didn't say good night, didn't say we made it. They just stood in the doorway, shoulder to shoulder, looking out at the stars. No need to explain it. They were building a life now, one quiet, stubborn gesture at a time. The next morning, the world held its breath. The sky wore a sheet of gray, soft and still, like it hadn't decided yet whether to rain or forgive. Jack stepped outside first. Lena followed, blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Tessa still slept, curled near the hearth like a kitten worn out from fighting. Everything looked, touched, not ruined, not whole, just touched by something that changed it. Jack went about the chores without a word. Lena joined in, mending the chicken coop door, collecting herbs that hadn't been singed by the fire. Neither of them talked about what happened. They didn't need to. The ring on Lena's finger said enough. Around midday, a rider approached. Not fast, not armed, just slow, deliberate, cautious.
It was Eli Walker, the town's old blacksmith, half Comanche himself, though most pretended not to notice. He dismounted a few yards out, kept his hands where Jack could see them. "I heard," he said. Jack nodded once. Eli looked past him, at Lena, then back. "Some of us don't agree with what Clay and his boys did. Town ain't got one voice, Jack. Never did." Jack studied him. Eli reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a wrapped bundle. "Couple of folks sent this. Bandages, tea, tools, nothing fancy." He set it down on a stump and tipped his hat. "You need anything, you know where the forge is." Then he rode off. Jack stood still for a long time after. Lena stepped up beside him. "He mean it?" Jack gave a small nod. "I think so." They didn't celebrate, didn't call it peace, but it was enough. That evening they sat by the fire again, this time with bowls of warm stew and a shared silence that felt earned. Tessa, hair still singed at the ends, pointed at the horizon. "Looks like rain." Lena smiled. "Good. This land's been dry too long." Jack didn't speak. He was watching the road. Not out of fear, but out of understanding. Things wouldn't go back to the way they were. But maybe, just maybe, they could go forward. The rain came that night. Not hard, not cruel, just steady, like the sky was finally ready to weep for what it had watched too long in silence. Jack and Lena didn't speak much as they moved inside, bringing the dry wood closer, checking the roof for leaks. It was quiet work, familiar now. Tessa sat by the window, watching drops race down the glass like they had somewhere to be. "You think they'll come back?" she asked. Jack looked up from the kettle. "Maybe." Lena, stirring the stew, added, "But we won't be the same when they do." That was the truth. They'd faced the fire, stood inside it, and chose to stay. After dinner, Lena stepped outside into the rain, bare feet sinking into the soft dirt. Jack followed, coat over one arm, in case she needed it. She didn't. She tilted her face to the sky, eyes closed, water trailing down her cheeks like something sacred. Jack stood behind her, not touching, just there. Then, slowly, Lena reached back without turning. Her hand found his,
pulled it forward, placed it on her waist, where his touch said more than any vow ever could. No music, no crowd.
Just rain and the sound of two people finally arriving at the same place at the same time. Later that night, after Tessa had gone to bed and the fire burned low, Jack took out the second journal his mother had kept, the one with blank pages. He opened to the first. At the top he wrote, "Started again, not alone." He closed it, set it on the table, then walked to the door, turned the latch, and left it open, just wide enough to say, "You're home, if you want to be." How are you feeling witnessing this scene? Let us know your emotions in the comments below. The rain lasted 2 days, long enough to soak the roots, to wash the blood from the camp trail, and to press the dust back into the ground like a memory being put to rest. When it finally stopped, the land didn't cheer. It just breathed, soft, steady, whole. Jack and Lena walked out the morning after, boots squishing in the soft mud, chickens restless, the world smelling of wet cedar and second chances. They didn't talk about what happened, about the fire, the threats, the way she held the ring like it might disappear if she let go. That was the thing about real wounds. You don't talk them down. You just learn to walk with the limp. Old Hawk didn't survive the infection. He passed quietly 2 nights after the storm, under the cottonwood tree he planted himself. Lena sat beside him as he went. Jack stood a few steps away, hand on Tessa's shoulder, keeping her anchored when her world tried to drift again. They buried him on the ridge. No cross, no stone, just a bundle of sage, a carved feather, and a silence that didn't feel empty. After, the 3 of them stood for a long time, no prayer, no song. Then Jack reached down, placed the old Bible from his mother's drawer on the grave. Not for show, not for God to see, but for him to remember. That some things, faith, land, love, were meant to be shared, not carried alone. Back at the ranch, the air felt different. Stillness, yes, but not the lonely kind. The kind that comes after a fire, when you know what survived was what mattered most. Jack fixed the barn door for the 3rd time, not because it needed it, because he wanted it right. Lena started planting along the porch, things that would take months, maybe seasons, to bloom. She didn't ask for help, and Jack didn't offer. He just brought her the shovel. That evening, the 3 of them ate stew on the porch. Tessa made a joke Jack didn't quite catch, but Lena laughed, and that was enough. No one mentioned the men from town. No one asked if they'd be back. Some questions didn't need answers, not when the living was finally louder than the fear. Spring settled in like an old friend who didn't need to knock. Grass crept green again near the fence posts. The creek found its voice back, trickling through the rocks like it had stories to tell if anyone just listened long enough. Life didn't change fast, it just started being different. Jack woke with the sun most days. Lena beat him to the chores sometimes. They didn't split work by role, just by rhythm. Whoever got there first did the thing. One morning he found his hat missing from the hook. In its place was a new one, same shape, better stitching. Comanche beadwork around the band. No note, just her style. He wore it without a word. Lena didn't move into the house all at once. She started with the porch, then a shelf, then her boots next to his. Eventually her voice filled the kitchen, humming songs he didn't know the words to, but started recognizing by tune. Tessa built a small lean-to near the back fence, called it her almost cabin. She said she'd move on once she found a place wilder than this. But her hammer stayed, and so did she. They lived like that, unremarkable maybe, but solid. Sometimes Jack caught himself reaching for the second cup of coffee before she even stepped outside. Other times she'd fix the button on his shirt without saying it had come loose. They didn't say, "I love you." They said, I saved you the last piece. Don't forget your scarf. There's stew on the stove." And once, during a quiet dusk, Lena turned to Jack as they watched Tessa chasing chickens across the yard. "You ever think about leaving?" Jack shook his head. "Not since the day you stayed." She didn't smile. She just leaned her shoulder against his. That was better than smiling, because it meant home. And little by little, the house started feeling like it could hold more than memories. It could hold hope. The day Jack built the cradle, he didn't say what it was. He just carried the wood out from the barn, pine, soft and sturdy, and laid the pieces across the porch like it was any other fix-it job. Lena didn't ask.
But she brought out her old shawl, the one stitched with stars, and draped it over the edge of the frame when he was halfway done. A quiet yes. They never talked about the child, not yet. But she touched her belly sometimes with a kind of stillness only women carry, like she was already hearing a heartbeat no one else could. Jack started carving names into the wall by the door. Not names of people, just dates, moments. The day the fire came, the day she stayed, the day they planted corn, the day the chickens finally listened to Tessa. No ceremony, just a record of a life that had begun again. One afternoon they walked to Old Hawk's grave together. Lena left a feather. Jack left his old rifle, leaned it against the cedar trunk like a warrior done fighting. "We made it," she whispered. "No," Jack said, "we're making it." And that mattered more. That night the wind came soft, warm, no longer a threat, just a reminder of where they'd been, of what they chose, of what still mattered even after the world cracked open. Lena sat on the porch swing, shawl around her shoulders, watching the moon rise. Jack brought 2 mugs of coffee, both chipped, both full. They didn't toast,
Didn't speak. They just sat, shoulders brushing, cups warm between fingers, letting the night hold them. Like grace, like home. And maybe you know that kind of silence too. The kind where love doesn't need music, where healing doesn't come fast, but comes honest. If this story touched something quiet inside you, something tired, something hopeful, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who still believes in slow love, second chances, and the kind of strength that doesn't shout. Because not every fire needs to blaze. Some just need to keep burning. If you like this video, comment number 1. If you don't, comment number 2. Please subscribe to the channel to watch more videos and give me more motivation to collect and share other stories.